I'm going to give a short talk at the MEA workshop on the report writing guide. The report writing guide is very important to the students and to the staff in terms of setting the standards and expectations for report writing by the students. Prior to this, the students were struggling in terms of what goes into a report, what do I need to say, how do I structure a report, what sort of style should I adopt in writing reports. This is clearly laid out in the MEA report writing guide. The following talk will outline why communication skills are important in the MEA program and what part you can play in terms of reinforcing report writing as part of the skills development of students. What I've interpreted, the reason for talking to you today about the report writing guide, is just to reinforce the commonality, to let you know about the standards we should be adopting across MEA. So that's how I interpret it. So the MEA program has a number of stakeholders, and on the face of it, we normally think the stakeholders are mainly the students. But in actual fact, there's a whole lot of stakeholders. And again, this is reinforced by David earlier. We've got industry in terms of I need engineers who can write reports. I don't know how many times I've heard people out in senior roles in the mining industry having regular presentations to our students saying, I need an engineer who can write a letter, write a memo, write a report. And he said this to a final year students on a number of occasions, and I pat him on the back later on and said, thanks very much, David. That's the message I've been trying to give to the students as well. There's the government itself. They've got requirements, AQF, professional associations, Engineers Australia, AusIMM, and universities. They've all got a part to play in terms of forming the MEA program itself. In terms of the elements of competency in Engineers Australia, PE 3.1, ability to communicate effectively with the engineering team and the community at large. When we go for accreditation of our programs at each university, Engineers Australia is looking to see how our program fits in with the requirements from Engineers Australia to get the accreditation. We have to be able to demonstrate that we're contributing to engineers in our program to be able to meet these requirements. And the item associated with it is PE 3.2, ability to manage information and documentation. Similarly, many of our faculties, for example, UNSW Faculty of Engineering has graduate attributes, and two of them listed here: skills of effective communication, and again associated information literacy, the skills to appropriately locate, evaluate and use information. A report Peter just distributed recently, last week or so, Engineering Workforce Study, published 2004. The relevance of engineering degrees is enhanced by industry and universities, continuing to build on collaboration, continuing to include in the engineering curriculum training for skills. There's a list of them. Communication comes up again. Time and time again, when we're looking at developing programs, communication is an important aspect to it. What I'm trying to provide is the context of why we've got this report writing guide, because it's one of the learning outcomes. True, we've got technical knowledge we've got to impart. True, we've got to try and develop the problem-solving skills, but communication is also one of those things that's built into the fundamentals of the program itself. And why? To increase, I think it's important, to increase the work readiness of engineering graduates. So when they get out there, they're not bumbling fools. And something I'd say to the first year students, why I've got a passion about report writing, because I was in the role, I was on the other side when I was in industry, the manager of mine planning at Tom Price. I had two graduates that took on. And as part of their development, we usually get them to do projects. One of them was fairly good at doing the work, managing the project itself, and putting a reasonable presentation together in terms of a report. You've all gone through that when you worked out in industry. I certainly did when I went out there and had to do a couple of reports for the general manager. I did the same for these graduates. The other student, yeah, he wasn't too bad at doing the hands-on work, but he couldn't put a report together. And the unfortunate thing for that student is, or that graduate then, would it set him back in terms of his development. He could do the work, but he couldn't demonstrate to management, in this case myself, and to senior management, the outcomes of his work, the quality of his work. And so unfortunate for him, because he hadn't had that training early at university, that it set him back in his career. And so when I came back to university, I realised we've got to make sure that the students, or the graduates that we produce, are able to put a report together. And I'm focusing on reports, but reports are not the only form of communication. Of course, there's presentation skills. There's another one I'm just thinking now, when we're looking at the thesis work. It's not just producing a written document, but they're also supposed to be, in the thesis project, practicing or honing the skills in project management. And the way we've set up the thesis project is that they're supposed to be having a relationship with their client and the supervisor of the client, having that conversation. And we try and reinforce that in recent years by giving the marks to have the consultation with the supervisor. The supervisor is not going to set up the presentation or the consultation with the student. It's up to the student as the project manager to go and talk to the client, give them the feedback. Where are we up to? What are the issues? What are the different options to solving problems? Another form of communication. So it's embedded in all different parts of the program itself. And the DYD project. I just added this from David's presentation. Generic capabilities communication, and as David said, write reports in the process capabilities. It appears time and time again. So it's a very important part of the skills of a graduate we see in MEA. Again, the learning outcomes emphasises communication again, as well as the whole host of other similar sort of domains that David was talking as well. This is going back 2006, 2007 when we put the MEA program together. Now I'll put this slide up, thanks Emmanuel, in terms of what part do you play in terms of communication skills. I can't see in here specifically a course on technical report writing. Just like safety, just like a number of different aspects of the program, we don't have a particular course on it. But it is part of the different courses in the different streams where we've got to reinforce the importance of not only design, analysis, looking for problems, analysing the different options, but then communicating that to the stakeholders, to your boss, to your peers. So it's very important that part of the program itself. Okay, now we've established that communication is important. There are a number of options which are available to us in terms of helping us developing or setting a set of standards for the students themselves. Which one do we choose one? Well, the most obvious one we could use is the AusIMM Guide to Authors. Why might we use it? Well, it's our professional association for mining engineers here in Australia. The program's based here in Australia. The students study here in Australia, but not necessarily they'll stay working in Australia. We designed the program so they can work anywhere in the world, but this is our association in Australia. But having said that, there are some limitations. This particular guide is mostly focused on conference papers. It's not designed to be helping students or graduates put reports together. And so it's not aimed at general report writing. So it's a good start, but it's not sufficiently comprehensive. There are other learning guides, and I picked this one up when I first came back to the uni, late 90s. Report writing guide for engineering students. Problem with these are they're usually generic. Either generic in terms of going across the different types of disciplines, and if it is for engineering, like this one here, it doesn't provide specific examples which are mining related. That's not so important. But in terms of the students being able to, our students in the MEA program, being able to understand the units of measurement, being able to understand what's often required by professionals in our association, wouldn't it be better if we had something which was related to mining that students can understand that this is what's expected as a mining engineering graduate. So these are good, but and certainly A little bit better than the guide to authors because they're looking at reports, but can we get something better? It's still. Another example, which is very comprehensive, a manual. I remember buying one of these when I was putting my undergraduate thesis together back in the late 70s. Terrific in terms of the coverage, but again, it's not specifically written for engineering and certainly not for mining engineering. And it's not consistent with the IMM Guide to Authors. So what can we do? There is a book which we have is available for all of us to use, available to you at a good price, and I've got a set of steak knives that go with it. But I don't think you really need these. But the good thing about the report writing guide, it is specifically tailored for the mining engineering students. It's consistent with what we expect of a graduate when they get out in industry, but it's provided in the context of why we're putting reports together and how we should be putting reports together as a mining engineering student. Having said that, David just mentioned to me a few moments ago about context. And there could be one deficiency about the report writing guide, and that's it's written from the perspective of an academic. It's not necessarily with the context of what the graduate could be expected to write in a report when they do get out and graduate in the future. So where I thought this is the 9th edition and I won't be having to make many changes in future because it's basically one new edition every year or every second year, I might be going back, and this is a work in progress now, to go back and revisit it from the different perspectives for the students. If we're doing it for a thesis, if you're doing it for a conference paper, you've got to write in this particular style. If you're writing for a different audience, it might be for a different, another style again. But let's park that up, that little bomb. Let's come back to the guide itself and why we've got the guide. It's to provide to the students a consistency in terms of these are our expectations when you put together an assignment, a report, a thesis, whatever, for the different courses within MEA. How it came about, back in 1999, I think the first year I started teaching, I wrote down common elements, faults I found in student papers, and it's 2 or 3 pages, then it grew 3 or 4 pages of just notes. Then for some reason I compiled those notes under different headings that I could see a structure there, and that was the first volume produced back in 2001. It was 16 pages then, 16 pages about that size. I deliberately didn't want it to be very large. But as it's grown over the years, as we found more and more problems, we thought the 16 pages would solve all the issues about report writing. It didn't. As we got more reports back from the students, we found more errors or more need for more clarification. And it's grown over the years until it's now 80 pages. But I should say half of the book, 40 pages, is appendices. In terms of distribution, we provide a copy of the report writing guide to every student. We print off every year or second year sufficient copies that every student coming into the MEA program, usually in first year, gets a copy of the report writing guide. So everyone's got a copy of it. And transfer students coming in later into the program, they also are given a copy of it. So every student has got a hard copy, so they can't say, I didn't know about this. Everyone's got a copy of it. And if they do lose it, there's a copy also available on the MEA webpage as well. So from the student side, they know what the standards are because they've got a copy of this guide itself. So what's the benefit of using this as a standard? Well, from the student's perspective, it provides a definitive guide on how to prepare a professional report. Avoids inconsistencies in terms of the different expectations from the different academics. The students in the past would say, oh, such and such academic wanted me to put this in the report and somebody said something completely different. I don't know which one, and I got marked down the second time I put the report in because I addressed the academics A, but academic B said something different. This is not fair. Why don't you tell me a consistent story? And that's the idea of this. At least it gives a consistent story to academics in terms of what we're expecting. Transparent up front to the students. They don't have to second guess. And I suppose this comes back to us in terms of knowledge that a report that's not compliant with the report writing guide is likely to result in lower marks. But we have to, pay a part to play in this. And the flip side of that is, if they are consistent with the report writing guide, then they won't get marked down. They'll get 10 out of 10. And it's encouragement for them to take on the style of writing, the format of writing and so on. From the staff perspective, provides a consistent set of guidelines, a consistent language, I suppose, in some ways. That we're all speaking the same language to the student. We all have the same set of similar expectations of students' writing. Avoids having to spend time on setting your own expectations, taking up the time, the effort on saying, well, this is what I want to see in the report. Allows you to get on more in the content of your particular course itself. So it allows staff to concentrate on content that should be covered in the students' reports. There's a flip side to this though. It's going to be helpful to everyone in the MEA, all the MEA academics, but it does require all MEA academics to reinforce and assess reports against the common standard. It does not mean I don't have a part to play and become someone else's issue, someone else's problem to worry about report writing. And I can forget about report writing standards. That's because someone else now worries about it in the program. I can just worry about geomechanics, or I can just worry about mine planning. No, coming back to those streams that earlier, we're supposed to be consistently reinforcing communication skills, report writing skills in our report, but the standard is provides the commonality. And certainly doesn't mean I can develop and mark against a whole set of new standards or different standards or my own standards, because that's going to lead to confusion to students. So the message I'm putting here is we've all got to be singing to the same hymn book. It makes it easy if we've got the hymn book and we're all happy with what's in there, and I don't mind changing if there's suggestions for improvement, that's fine. But we've got to be using the same book and same set of rules, same set of standards, because it's going to make it a confused message to students in terms of what we're expecting from them. So how do we go out implementing the report writing guide? What part do I have to play? Mark against the standards as laid out in the MEA report writing guide. Use the standards, what's in there. We use the expectations, the language, the format that's written up in there. But to do that, first you've got to know what's in here. Because if you don't know what's in here, you're not going to be able to mark against it. You'll be marking against your own set of standards if you've taken from elsewhere. So become familiar, read it. It's not going to come to you by osmosis. Holding it's not going to get there. You're going to have to read it. If you don't read it, then you're doing a disservice to your students, to the MEA program. Yes, but how? In course assessments. This is how where you can play a part. In terms of the MEA program, we have graduate attributes. When we put the program together back in the last decade, we had graduate attributes and we have learning outcomes for each of our different courses. Each course is usually linked to assessing performance against one or more of these learning outcomes. So in your course outline or course profile, you'll have assessments and there should be a link to the different learning outcomes. Most assessment tasks will have defined assessment criteria or rubric. We develop them in the research project. We develop in the rock breakage course. I'm sure you've got them in all your other courses. Well, if not for all the major tasks, if not just for the major tasks, if not for all the tasks, assessment tasks in the course itself. The assessment criteria defines the expectations of us academics of what we expect to see in that particular assessment task. Listed or grouped under a number of different domains. In general terms, we sometimes say to the students in terms of expectation that one objective of this assignment is to develop and improve skill in report writing, or is expect the report will be prepared to a professional standard of presentation analysis, or the following elements form part of the standards of report writing: structure, format and style. So not only do we provide the rubric, but we also provide a guideline in terms of this is what we want you to, how important it is not only doing the work, but also preparing the report which presents the results in a written form for assessment. Now I just want to show you two examples of assessment criteria which you should be aware of, because we're all involved in the research project as supervisors. There are a number of different domains, assessment domains in the, for the thesis course. It's either the thesis itself or the project progress report, and this one comes out of the project report. These are the last two domains. The first one is a standard of report presentation. And this is what we set out in terms of the expectations of an excellent report. To get 10 out of 10 in this, for this domain in this particular assignment, in terms of the formal report written and presented, report structure that contains all required sections, format and so on. So we're telling the students up front, that has got to be consistent with the report writing guide. And as I said, this is the assessment criteria for this particular course and across all the universities. If we're not marking against here, then the students have got a legitimate complaint in terms of, well, you told me this is what you're marking against, but you're not. How can you mark me down if I've read the report writing guide and prepared my report in accordance with its requirements? And similarly with the referencing. This last section is on referencing. We've written out the requirements, defined the requirements for an excellent part of the assessment with regard to referencing as well. So as I said, you'll have assessment criteria for most of your reports, for most of the assignments in probably all the MEA courses. And one reason why I've raised it in terms of how well we are implementing marking against the report writing guide. Up to now, there hasn't been a chance to look at how well we are implementing the standards or the expectations of students against the report writing guide itself. But I had that opportunity when we produced the third volume of the Journal of Research Projects Review. So this is the third volume that came out this year, in which we had 11 papers co-authored by students and the supervisors. As a result of that, I put together a report released early this year and to the executive and to the PLC, and a copy was distributed to all MEA academics in June. Everyone's got a copy of this report. But the report highlights and went through the process itself and saying how well we did in terms of the review and so on. But I talked about some of the issues that came up. And this is a Pareto chart of some of the issues. And these are the major issues ranked from a lot of the issues that were picked up by, not by myself, but the reviewers in the comments back of the different papers. And there was 19 papers submitted for review. And in the end, only 11 of those papers were actually printed in the end, or published in the end. The most common errors were associated with the structure, substantiation, or statements which were not substantiated within the paper itself, referencing. I was shocked by the number of papers, in this case here, 16 reviewers highlighted the problems with referencing in the paper. And then the style of writing in the paper itself, the formatting. All these are things which I thought shouldn't be an issue, especially by people putting these papers together. Because who are these people? These are the final year students. They've gone through 4 years of the program. They've finished the thesis. They've submitted a paper for publication, and yet we've still got issues with referencing, which should have been fixed up in year 1 and 2 of the program. How are they slipping through the whole program and still don't know how to reference properly? There's a slide which I've taken out in terms of identifying what the different issues about referencing, and I'm just amazed that they couldn't get this right, as well as a style. In the conference paper, I saw evidence of people using the first person in the conference paper. Okay, in reports, it can be okay, but it's not okay in professional papers being presented in the conference paper, as well as the formatting and so on. So as I said, this was a litmus test. It said to me that this isn't being followed. People may not be aware of it. People may not understand the content on it. People may be ignoring it. But we're doing a disservice for the students if they're getting right through to the end of the program and they don't know how to reference, as well as other issues. Why haven't the academics picked this up earlier in the program? We're not doing them a favour. And this is something that's black and white, there's other issues that might also be slipping through. So coming back to why is this presentation here this morning? It's the message to you that you've all got a part to play in terms of reinforcing the standards of the students. It's not to Paul Hagan, it's not to Basil, it's not to individual academics who at each university. It's beholding to all of us to enlighten the student in terms of how they can improve their report writing skills. If you have any questions, just been reminded of time, please come and see me later on, but thank you very much for your attention. A copy of the report writing guide is provided to every academic member of staff, as well as to each new student who joins the program each year. Electronic copy of the report writing guide can be downloaded from the MEA website.